Hello and welcome to the Hawks Nest live stream show. For lack of better name at this time, Brendan, I'm going to just call it B&B until we can find something a little
I
more
like it.
catchy. Until we can
I
get some
like
more
it.
catchy. Of course, we got my man Seahawks Brendon Nelson in the house coming in for our weekly segment. He comes over here every other week. I go over to his channel every other week. And if you're not already aware, Brendan runs a great channel over there of Seahawks content. And Brendan, we've got always, as always, a lot to discuss, a lot to unpack here. And you know where we like to begin. First off, welcome. Good to have you in the
Yeah.
house.
Good to be back on. Good to be back on, man.
Where's our
Good to
mind
be
state
here.
right now in general? Before we get to this Packer game, where were we at just head wise as far as you know?
It's been kind of hard for me to really zero in. For me, and I don't know about you, but for me as a Seahawks content creator on YouTube, the hardest part is finding the right amount of reaction to have to things,
Mm,
because I look in my comments on the videos in the Discord. And as these games are happening, you're going to see a lot of overreacting from a lot of people. I think it's just in the nature of a sports fan to overreact.
yeah,
And you see that and you try to tamp it down a little bit. You try to get people to scale it back. You try to get people to see the big picture. But the danger there is you work so hard to not overreact that you underreact. The hard part for me is finding the right amount of react to have to things that happen.
yeah,
And that's been a struggle for me ever since this Packers game started, because looking back at that Packers game, I kind of feel like it could have been a pretty significant turning point for where the Seahawks go after this season. I feel like some of the things that happened in that game, I know they're just a handful of plays, and I was trying not to overreact to it, but at the same time, I was trying to not underreact to it because I was working so hard to not overreact. And it just feels like that game. The sad part of it is the black pill now feels like it's closer than it ever was. These off-season scenario where Pete Carroll manages to sell the organization on the idea that, hey, I'm the right guy for the job. I just need a better quarterback or a different quarterback or whatever. So give me more power. I want more power. Let me run everything and I'll fix this. I'm the right guy for that. A game like that is going to go a long way towards helping him sell that idea. I even see some people in my comments starting to buy in on it. And I don't believe it, but that game gives that stance a lot of credibility. So I was definitely a little glass half empty coming out of that game, and I still kind of am. Maybe a little more than even you, but that's kind of where I am.
I think it's fair. It's absolutely fair, and I think to your point on this, speaking, yeah, as another guy that's in that same boat, and I do feel for you. Some and not trying to be lick our wounds here extra, but it's hard. You're trying to find that balance. You're trying to be completely honest with people. You're trying to be, but you've got people flying in so many different directions on this one, Brendan. So many different ideas about what's there to fit, what's the best way, and the team's got such wild swings where the theme or the general how we could look at this to get a good understanding of I don't know what the word would be here, just the right understanding of how this is really playing out to make an observation that's correct. Where it's like, okay, the offense is okay, the defense is bad, the offense is up, okay, Carroll's not getting stuff. Oh, this is bad, and then he gets that game like this, which you're right on that point. Carroll stands in front of that committee, right? That Chuck Arnold committee at the end of the year, and he goes, "Hey, look at that Packer game in Lambeau in November. The snow's falling." You know, you make it all dramatic and how he tells it to him, and he's like, "Was it my defense that was failing? Or if you listen to my point on this, to your point on that, moving on from my quarterback, bop it a bop it a bop." And it makes me worry for that black pill, Brendan. It's a big pill. That was the
Mm-hmm.
biggest of your pills. All your other pills,
Yeah,
you could kind of get it down your throat. That one's like twice the size of a horse pill to get that sucker down.
yeah, and it's a suppository, unfortunately.
You didn't tell me that before. This is new. My God, man. What are we doing here? What are we doing,
Yeah,
Carol?
yeah,
Well, the throat doesn't open like it does when you're a younger man.
yep.
Uh, all right. Well, let's look at this Packer game. I'm really interested to hear what your thoughts are on this and what you kind of took away with those tempered, tempered hopeful expectations. What kind of in general first did you walk away from, and then maybe we'll get a couple of the details of this game and what your thoughts are.
Well, I caught a little bit of your stream after the game, and it seemed like you were talking a lot about this defense. And we'll definitely talk about the defense because they did do an awesome job in that game. There's very little negative you can say about those guys, but I guess I just couldn't help really fixating on the offense from that game because that's where all the attention was. We got our quarterback back. It was his first game back in a month. You're going to be focused on that kind of stuff because it's exciting. It's interesting. It's like, oh, wow, this offense might actually have a chance to do something against a good a good team. Actually manage to compete at a higher level, and then to see that result where you get shut out for the first time in over 10 calendar years, where you have 208 yards of offense, where you average, I think, 3.5 yards per play, not per run, per play. And I initially coming out of that game, I was just, okay, so you start that game and the offense isn't really doing anything. Wilson's not really doing anything. And obviously all eyes are on him because he just got back in there and it's not going well, but the offensive line isn't playing well. And it's like, okay, I get that. I understand that. That's not surprising to me anymore. Dwayne Brown's getting his brakes beaten off, but I'm kind of used to that by now. Damian Lewis is getting ragdolled, but that's the way things are going for him this season. And then the game goes on and Wilson starts missing these really easy throws that he always makes. And I'm like, okay, that's the finger. Like, I'm not going to get too mad about that. That just is what it is. Maybe he shouldn't be out there, but that's a discussion for another time. The bottom line is he is out there. I think there was one play where he had Lockett wide open 5 yards down the field and overthrew him by like 10. And it's just like, okay, that's obviously the finger. I'm not going to kill him for that. I get it. And then it wasn't just the fact that he played bad, because like I said, there were a lot of reasons why. I cannot believe some of the decisions he made at the end of this game. That which should have nothing to do with the finger. If anything, he should be more persuaded to make safer, simpler throws when he doesn't have all of his physical attributes at 100%. And I'm just watching this game. We're down 10 points. There are 8 minutes left. The game is not over. The game is not over at all. And he thinks it's a good idea to throw a Hail Mary to a double-covered Tyler Lockett on first down. And I go back to the stuff that we talked about this offseason with Wilson, where we knew that he needed to develop a shorter game. He needed to develop a more intermediate game. He needed to get away from always trying to do it all on one play. He needed to get away from always throwing it deep. We didn't want him to get rid of that, but we wanted him to start to incorporate other elements into his game. And there were moments this season where it looked like he was kind of starting to get it, but then you would have moments like against the Titans where it seemed like he just wasn't willing to take that short stuff. But at that point, I was like, okay, this is going to be a process. This is going to take a while. I get it. But that excuse is starting to fade. Wilson has now been with this coordinator for a whole offseason plus half a season, or a little more than half a season. He's had time to start to pick this stuff up. And it just kind of blew my mind that in that game, at that moment, in that situation, that he just doesn't get it. He doesn't understand that you can take that underneath throw to Gerald Everett in that situation, keep the game alive. So I have to admit, as somebody who has tried really hard to not overreact to every single thing that Russell Wilson does, to not give up in him and then have my faith restored in him every other play, I'm starting to worry that he just doesn't get it and he's never going to get it. That's kind of how I felt coming out of that game for the most part. I just don't understand why he thinks it's a good idea to take those chances, throwing it into double coverage in the end zone twice in a low-scoring game when there's just no need for that. And after he did it in the Titans game, I blew it off because, like, oh, he'll get it. Now I'm starting to feel like maybe he just won't. Maybe he doesn't get it. So that's what I'm saying.
I'm with you on that. It was a thing going back to last year where my criticism began really for the first time with Russell in his career was halfway into the year after the let Russ cook thing was done. And you started to see a guy that went into a shell of himself a little bit at times. And again, the overabundance of reliance on the deep ball, not taking underneath stuff. We literally have a meme moment in that Rams game where he's got a couple guys breaking open, I think Disley and a running back, yet he's choosing to try to throw it to Lockett down the sideline in a similar type of play. You're not just add on your point on that Lockett, by the way, not only are you throwing in a double coverage, you're throwing a trust throw to Lockett. Yeah, he's wide open initially, but when you finally see him open and decide to run to throw it, it's now turning into Lockett having to high point the ball, which Tyler Lockett's not going to be a high point ball guy. He runs 5'9.5", maybe 5'10" on a good day if he goes to the chiropractor. I'm with you on this, and this is where it makes it hard to make an evaluation on the situation because unfortunately this is the first time that Russell's been put into an offense like this before. So we have to make this evaluation in one season. We have to make it now with an injury part added into it, which is causing a whole nother layer of complexity to the situation. But still, it has to be a determination that not just we make, but let's face it, the coaching staff makes. Because that same argument you just talked about, Carroll being able to make to the committee members after the season and saying, hey, you already signed me to a contract extension. The quarterback already said he wanted out of here. Then look at how he played when we gave him his new offense. Bop, the narrative is set for him to go down that path if he does want to go down that path. Which is kind of looking like how it starts to prevailingly look, the smoke kind of clears here now. And then we're starting to see that's how this does appear to be, how this is going to maybe play out now if it goes down that direction of things. And that's unfortunate. But Russell, to counter that, has got to play within this offense. He's got to show the willingness to embrace the stuff within it. In the I'll throw it, DK and Tyler are down there somewhere approach to things, he's got to get it's got to be embraced quick this year. He really does. We're not going anywhere this season. It's obvious at this point. And that meme that you talked about, you said the Gerald Everett thing, just to make sure I'm referencing what you're telling to the audience. That throw to Lockett, by the way, when he's talking about Everett in the flat, is Gerald Everett running a little out flat route underneath, wide open, bare ass open, right? With not a defender probably 3 or 4 yards ahead of him. It's probably going to be a 6 or 7 yard play, right? Maybe at the most. But it is a 6 and 7 yard play, to your point again, on first down. And that's where I know Russell's injured, but he's got use your legs then. If you can't throw the short stuff, then run all over the hell then. Adapt, but don't go back to the old stuff again thinking this is good. It's done working at this optimal level it once worked at. That first 8 games is done from last year. It's not going to happen again. Teams are playing the cover too. So yeah, I agree with you. Sorry, that's definitely a point that I've been on. I've been, sticks in my craw a bit too. So we'll see where he goes with it.
His air yards are higher so far this year than they have ever been, under Schottenheimer or Bevel. They are higher than they've ever been. That's weird, right? You get an offense that is supposed to reduce that, and he goes the exact opposite way. That's I don't understand it.
Well, on the top of your point, he's always usually league leader in that category too, right? That's in those old not like he was in those old offenses like top 10 and just throwing just a minimal amount of air yards. He keeps dialing it up more and more and more, almost kind of pressing back against those people to say, hey, just take the short stuff. Just, learn to take that stuff underneath and everything else. And people have pointed to me and said it's a height thing, Brendan, but I really don't think at this point, height is an impediment in the situation of being a good short thrower of the football. There's no doubt about it. But when you look at Kyler Murray in the same division you play in, spread formations, hitting that short stuff along with the deep stuff, it looks to me like there's a little bit of a willingness and want approach to this that we have to bring into this if he continues to resist it. I don't think eventually I think it'll snap in somehow, some way. I'm hoping, but he's got to embrace it. He absolutely has to.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some good stuff with this game, because I know the defense we glossed over a little bit, but I've been very reticent to give much praise to this defense over the last few weeks because they were beating on these little low life offenses, bottom 20s offenses in the league. But this game was a legitimate game, in my opinion, probably the best defensive game we've seen on the road against a legitimate offense. And I think probably quite a bit of time, Brendan. And it's a part to me that starts to give me, as I am worried about the offense, as I am worried about Russell, this part does give me a little bit of hope. Does it as well with you in seeing these defensive performances stack up like they have?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's almost, in a way, as much as a 3-score loss can be a positive, it's kind of nice that the team so neatly separated the positive from the negative. You just look at one side of the ball or the other.
Yeah.
The defense, obviously played a phenomenal game. They might have played their best game since maybe since they held the Cardinals with Carson Palmer to 6 points in the last game of the
Agreed.
season in 2015.
Yeah,
That's the
agreed.
last time I can remember them playing that well. So, and the thing is, the interesting wrinkle here, it's not all just talent. Some of this stuff looks schematic. And Matty F. Brown, who I've talked about before here, has been all over this for months. 2 months ago, when the defense looked like the worst that Pete Carroll had ever had, he was posting on Twitter, no, this defense is still good. Ken Norton is still good. You guys you're going to see it eventually. They would go out and give up 450 yards to Jimmy Garoppolo, and he'd say, no, this defense, they're almost there. This defense is going to be great. And he's been beating his chest for the last month, but now he can really beat his chest because of what they did against the Packers. He's been firmly in the Ken Norton Jr.'s doing awesome camp for a while, and I almost stopped following him because I'm like, I can't take this guy seriously anymore. But maybe he at least had something of a point. Now, I still say, why did it take so long for this to get figured out? Because most of the players and all of the coaches and all of the scheme was carried over from last year. So why did it take 5 games of garbage for you guys to actually start playing good? But they are genuinely playing good. They're doing some cool stuff schematically. We saw dropping defensive linemen into coverage actually work in that game several times. And I don't know where this leaves us going forward. I can't have a defense that takes a month or a month and a half to start playing good every season, obviously. But right now they are doing some things really well. And it seems to me that Norton is maximizing the talent of the players that he has, and he's putting them in positions to succeed right now. And as Matty F. Brown said on Twitter, consistently beating enemy indicators. So I don't know what to make of it, but this is a shocking revival.
Yeah. I'm with you. My jaw's a bit dropped on this one. I would not have thought you would have kept on any day of the week the Packers to 3 points through 3 quarters based off of what we had seen with this defense early on in the season. It didn't feel close to me early on the season. It didn't feel like, well, they're just a hair away, Brendan, in these moments where they just can do nothing defensively to stop anything, and the allowing the running backs underneath to catch everything. But I will indeed say this is the thing that's partially gives me, I'm not saying it's not blind hope here, but does give me some hope, is that if you can play this kind of defense right now and it comes along in this way, and you look at the schedule going forward, which is one of the easier schedules going forward, there is a potential. And we'll get to that in a second when we look at the Cardinal game here. But it does give me a little bit of light of hope in a season where there's not a lot of light of hopes. Let me say that, Brendan, where there's not a lot of stuff that's been like, oh yeah, this is going to go good. This is all going to a great, not just this season, but into the future type realm of things. Trey Brown, so one guy I want to talk to you a little bit about player-wise on this. What have you thought of Trey Brown? How impressed, or where do you rank his kind of as a Seahawks fan and young corners jumping onto the scene? How would you rate him and rank him?
He surprised me a lot. When we drafted him, I didn't really know how to feel. I was like, okay, I was pretty neutral on that. But one thing I felt for some reason was that I didn't expect big things from him as a rookie. I just didn't think he was going to immediately transition to the NFL. But according to PFR, he was targeted twice against the Packers and allowed 0 receptions. And I'm not 100% sure if that's true or not, but it's believable.
Yeah.
And I offhand, I'm totally willing to buy it. So Trey Brown is definitely a big part of the reason why this defense has turned around, because it's allowed things to start to make sense in other areas. Like, his emergence has allowed you to safely move DJ Reed to the other side of the defense where he's most comfortable. And by the way, DJ Reed's playing really good football lately as well. And like I look at that 4th down play, the 4th and 2, where he breaks up the pass for Lazard that would have been a first down. And I don't hate Trey Flowers. I don't. But Trey Flowers would have allowed that completion, made the tackle, and been like, hey, I held him to 4 yards. You gave up the first down.
Yeah.
And Trey Brown, when Rodgers is throwing that pass, he's like 6 yards away from Lazard, and he just closes that distance. It's like he's moving as fast as the football is. It's pretty remarkable break on the ball there. And that's the kind of stuff that we haven't seen in Seattle lately. It feels like cornerbacks who really break on the ball.
Well, and this is the place you've got to give, as we do give not credit to the sometimes Carolyn front office and being rigid, the different looks and defensively what they're doing in the secondary it jumps out to you, of course. But then this as well. We used to never touch anything that was under 6 feet. Had to be a 6 foot corner, right? We're not going to grab you in
Mhm.
the draft if you're not, but now DJ Reed, you make an exception for last year. It's paid off. You made an exception for Trey Brown in this past draft. You just said, let's get, he's a good football player. He can play the game. He's twitchy. Jumped on that. It's helped you out. Stepping out of your comfort zone sometimes can bring some benefits, as far as like maybe a lesson learned here to drive forward for the team. And hopefully they can start to maybe make some of those other adjustments on other positions,
Mhm.
not to be so rigid. Um, quick question on something before we kind of look forward on this to the Packer game a little bit. Odell Beckham Jr. in retrospect, when we talked about this a couple weeks ago, there was really not really much on the radar with him going to the Rams. I don't think at that time. If we're going to lose him, we're going to lose him somewhere else like the Saints or something. Um, give me a little bit of your first. In retrospect, of knowing the Rams land him, do you pull the waiver wire claim on him? Do you grab that trigger knowing at that point what happens and go, okay, we got to do that? Or do you try to come in and if not, do you try to come in and offer him a salary to beat the Rams, or are you just out completely at that point?
Well, I actually had a really interesting internal debate with myself on the waiver wire issue last week when it was coming down to the fact that he might just not want to play here. I think he had there were some quotes that indicated that he wanted to play for a team that he had confidence would throw the ball 65% of the time, and he maybe felt like Seattle wasn't that place, which is kind of ironic given what happened against the Packers. But I my first instinct was we can't pick him up off waivers because of the price. It would have been what, $7.25 million or something like that.
Yeah.
And my first instinct was we can't pay $7.25 million for 9 games of a player who has all these red flags. And as I was thinking that, I kind of caught myself and was like, wait a minute, why do I care if this team has cap space? So they can sign another Greg Olsen, so they can sign another Luke Jokel, so they can extend another Jerron Reed and then get rid of him after 1 year.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of caught myself. Sometimes you got to really pull yourself back from thinking too much about the salary cap as a football fan, I think, because you forget about things like, what does this team ever do with that money anyway? They don't sign the big free agents. They occasionally sign decent filler players, but those are the players who are usually pretty cheap anyway. And as I thought about it, I was like, well, if I actually want Odell, why should I care if this team has cap space this offseason? They don't use it well. They in this offseason's case, they didn't use it, period. So I kind of caught myself thinking about that. I was like, wait a minute. I mean, like, yeah, 7 million for 9 games of Odell is a problem, but I think I'd rather have 9 games of Odell than 10 games of another Greg Olsen next offseason, who's the washed up tight end or washed up tackle you're going to sign this time. That's kind of my main thing on it. Now, as for once he hit free agency, I was actually informed that we did offer him more money than the Rams did, and he still chose the Rams. I think a couple other teams also offered him more money, and he chose the Rams because he has a home in LA. He lives there. And I think he kind of got sold on playing in LA. LeBron sold him on it, which there was some stuff there that I think was genuinely difficult to compete with. I'm going to be fair about that.
Yeah.
I still think you probably could have done it if you had a more exciting offense and a coaching staff who was a little more open to things like playing the spread with 4 different receivers, getting Odell on the field a lot. But looking back on it there, I'm a little less perturbed about it, I think.
Yeah, one of the worst things when I signed, I thought, Brandon, was, man, one of the most brutal things for this franchise has been the St. Louis Rams moving to Los Angeles and all that's brought, as far as just we can't recruit anybody out that. I mean, we're in direct competition with them over and over for the same type of players, and we have no chance. Where you got all these cats that want to go and be in LA, and it's like, ugh, God, this is add another layer that sucks. It makes it much harder. But I think it's well said, and I didn't know that about adding more money. I had not. We had offered more, so I got to give the franchise credit with that. I will say, for me again, doesn't come as much down to Odell, and then I would have been on board with doing it as much as just leaving that 13 some odd $million
Yeah.
on the cap this year for
Mhm.
how important a season this was, and how we'll look at that in retrospect to go, you maybe needed to do something else with that in the off season. Maybe go a different way with it. One other point too is on what you said earlier with starting out slow, and 2 years in a row now the defense starting out slow. Since it does look like we're going down the black pill road with Coach Carroll next year, maybe another lesson learned in this is to stack the team up earlier on. If it's going to take all the guys and parts and pieces kind of figure stuff out, is get them a little more dominant at the beginning of things rather than waiting for that trade deadline deal next year. As they seem to kind of have been trying to do, or maybe they just intended to roll all over the money the whole way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like I said last week, just don't do the void years. Just spend all your cap money this year. Don't do the void years.
Yeah.
I don't know why that was so hard.
I don't either. They're weird about it. All right. One thing I do with Russell thing, last point on this, and we'll draw this forward. This is one thing I want to talk to you about with this. I didn't know this information came out right after the game when I was talking to my live stream. This came out a few days later, a day or two later, and I hadn't realized it. They took out all of their under center stuff with Russell Wilson in that game. All of their under center stuff. St. Louis Rams in 2020, I believe, ran the highest percentage of under center offense in the entire NFL and have run it at a predominant rate for years now. How do we get to the point where we throw out half of our playbook with an injured quarterback as well at that point and not put Geno out there? Or how do we not continue to do that as we go forward to a game like the Cardinals?
Yeah. I heard about that too. I also heard that they didn't want Wilson to hand the ball off very much because they thought that would put his finger in harm's way. That was part of the reason why they only ran 11 handoff plays? Something like that. They felt like it actually put his finger at more risk to do handoffs than it did to just throw it. And when you think about these things, it starts to make a lot more sense why you got shut out, and it makes a lot less sense why you thought Wilson was ready. It kind of reminds me of you remember when RG3 tore his ACL in the Seahawks against the playoffs, and then that whole offseason he had this advertising campaign with, I think it was Subway, and the hashtag was like all in for week one, like I'm gonna rehab, I'm gonna be back for week one. And the whole offseason, he was just on social media, hashtag all in for week one, all in for week one, all in for week one. And then you get to week one, and it's like, well, of course I have to play. I spent this whole offseason hyping it up, and he was not ready, not even close. And he goes out there and sucks it up, and everything goes bad, and his whole career gets derailed. So I think there was so much hype about Wilson making his return in Lambeau Field that once they got there, they felt like, yeah, we got to do it. We got to put him out there. It's hard for me to say that he should have been out there given all these things that I'm hearing. Like, you can't run from under center. You're doing all this stuff in the pistol, which I haven't seen that much of from Wilson before. You can't hand the ball off. You're missing wide open throws that you hit 99 times out of 100 that honestly most high school quarterbacks hit. It starts to become hard to justify that, but it's a weird situation. I understand there is some argument to the fact that he is your franchise player, and if he's even on some very low level physically capable of being out there, he should be out there. But that may have been a error on the part of this organization, and looking back at it, I think we can safely say it probably was.
Yeah. Do you go forward though then with it? I mean, you go this week with the Cardinals, the situation really, I'm guessing, hasn't changed. His finger's not going to be good enough to take handoffs. Maybe it is, or maybe they give more handoffs, but no snaps under center. That's the part that if you hadn't have gone to an offense this offseason that's based towards building around the quarterback being under center, I'd be okay with it. But like this, you mentioned the pistol. When did we get the pistol instituted in the NFL? By the Washington football, or what at that time, the Washington Redskins, when they had RG3, who you just mentioned. That was the offense that they were running, was that pistol offense deal that they eventually did in San Francisco with the Niners in the same way. All got copied across the board, basically. But that's what does it rely upon to have a quarterback out of the pistol? A quarterback who's going to use his legs and be a threat out of the read option game, or whatever you want to call that, where he's faking the handoff behind. I don't know. It's not a pure read option anymore because the guy's behind his back. But, you get the gist of it, is that right. The quarterback still has to be a threat to keep the ball and take it and run. He's not. So no defense no longer is going to respect Wilson like that, and thinking they got to keep a defender, sit down, watch him, stay, all that stuff. That's the part I don't get. It's setting it up to fail a little bit, I feel like, Brendan. Whereas I don't think Geno's going to light the world on fire. But look, if we're going to be shut out, we're at the low of the low. You can kind of only go up from there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And for all we know, Geno throws 3 first quarter interceptions and we're down 17-0 before we can blink if he plays, and then we end up losing like 42-3. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's no way to know. But it's hard to believe it could have been worse than that game. And with the way that game went, you can make a very coherent and convincing argument that we win that game with Geno, or at the very least we're in it in the final minutes with a chance to either hold or score on the final drive to win. So I understand that he's your franchise player, and if you can come up with any excuse to put him out there, you're going to want to put him out there. It's like LeBron gets to shoot technical free throws even though he's never the best free throw shooter on his team, because he's LeBron.
Right.
And you want to put him out there to score as many points as you can. You want to put Wilson out there, but yeah, probably should have decided that discretion was the better part of valor there. I agree.
Yeah. Well, we're going forward. We're looking forward to the season. Before, I guess we're going to concentrate on the Cardinals here a second. We'll eventually get to the Cardinals, I promise.
Yeah.
Where do you see this team going now throughout the rest of this year? What's the trajectory?
Well, it's not too bad of a schedule. In fact, I think in terms of remaining strength of schedule, we have the 3rd easiest remaining schedule in the NFL. A lot of lackluster teams. And as much as I'm somewhat glass half empty on this team right now, I think we can beat those teams. I think we can beat Houston and Detroit, and those are kind of no-brainers. But Washington, they've now lost Chase Young for the season, and I think they're not going to have Montez Sweat, so that's a huge portion of their defense just ripped out. And I don't know really what I'm leaning on other than the fact that we have their number, but I still think we're probably going to beat the 49ers, honestly. Like, I think that's a good matchup for us, and I think there's some stuff that in that matchup that we're consistently able to take advantage of. I think we're going to beat the Niners. So there are going to be some wins. There are definitely going to be some wins, but my main hang up is, are we going to get a pelt on the wall before the season ends, right? And this is something that I talked about last week. At some point, we need to prove that we can beat a good team. At some point. And, I look at it like, we're going to get into this Cardinals game in a second, but a lot of people in my chats and comments are saying, man, I really hope Kyler doesn't play so we can win. And I agree with that sentiment. It's pretty obvious why you would think that, but isn't that kind of the problem, that you feel like you can't win unless Kyler Murray doesn't play? The fact that you already kind of feel like, well, if Kyler plays, then I don't know what we do, which, hey, I agree with that sentiment, but that's the problem. Yeah. I don't have any confidence because you're going to play good teams in the playoffs. And I made a video earlier this week asking the question, do you really want to see this Seahawks team in the playoffs with the way they are right now? They got basically no running backs. The one real running back they have right now has a bad hip. You've got a quarterback with a bad finger. Who knows if that's going to be 100% before the end of the season? He can't even play under center. He can't hand the ball off. Like, do you want to see this team in the playoffs? And what I'm saying is, if they can't beat a good team by the end of this season, then I kind of just feel like it's going to be so embarrassing when you get into the playoffs that it's not even going to be worth that extra game.
Yeah. It's definitely, that is the trajectory I think you would look at if they could get into the playoffs, that's the likely probably outcome, outside of some injury plague that goes through the season, or Seattle just somehow catches some weird fire, and the way that they're like the defense is done on their side. What happens, Brendan, on a team that can't get one thing right while the other thing's going at the same time, right? For the last 2 years now, the offense is up, defense is down, or I'm doing this wrong. Defense is down, offense is up, right? Defense is up, offense is down. Neither can seem right as one's just about to break through. Here comes the other one and drops that one back. They can't go at the same time. What would happen if you could get both going at the same time through the rest of the whole season? How amazing would that be if you could maybe get to that point? But again, it's a long shot. I think, Brendan, with that tiebreaker situation as it exists with the Saints and the Saints are as much
Vikings.
of a problem, but the Vikings especially, that the tiebreaker that exists there, you got to be one game better, which to me closes
Hmm.
a little bit of that door of sort of backing your way in. You still
Yeah.
don't quite do what you're talking about, which is give you a good run of games. We're like, ooh, we took down them on the road, handled them at home. That's 2 quality wins. And you're not going to really get that. But those, I still come away going, man, those 2 of 3 games, 2 against Cardinals, 1 against the Rams, you come away with 2 of those. To me, that's legitimate. To me,
Yeah.
that's earned your way in. And to me, you got a fighting chance at that point.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I did a study actually earlier this week. I looked at every team in NFL history that had won the Super Bowl without a dominant regular season,
Mm-hmm.
and with two exceptions, every team had beaten at least one really good team at some point in the season. So my point is, like, yeah, you can sleepwalk through part of the regular season, but at some point you got to show me that you're a good team, that you belong at the big boy table. And so far this year, I don't think the Seahawks have done it. I know they took the Titans to overtime. The Titans are good, but you got to actually
You're
finish the
good.
job.
You got to do
Hmm.
good, like it's a Titans, Colts, okay, but no, you're right. You got to show
Hmm.
something else beyond that. You can't just go beat on the lowest of the lows throughout the whole season, get lucky with the schedule at the end, and all of that. Especially if you have like the Cardinals, for instance, win the division, right, and then you get to the end of the year, and then the Cardinals are resting everybody in Week 17, so you have another freebie win with the 5 games you mentioned. That's then 6 on what you've already done. That's a 9-win season right there, potentially, right, as we stand
Hmm.
right now. So it's, to your point, that could easily become the way it goes. Um, all right, well, let's look at this. Let's look at this Cardinal matchup. We've got question marks surrounding Kyler Murray, question marks surrounding DeAndre Hopkins, no JJ Watt, no Chase Edmonds, it appears, unless I'm wrong on that one. Correct me if I'm off
I
on that one.
believe you're correct.
So where do you see this game going? Let me get your what give me the flow of this game. We don't have to do the full on prediction quite yet, but just give me what you see first, how it goes, and then what you think. Let's go and see how you see how it goes, and then how you would maybe counter that if this is to go, especially if it goes wrong, or change it, or just go with what if we win.
Well, I think this might be a game where you really miss Marquise Blair because, unlike the Packers, who don't have great wide receiver depth, the Cardinals love to spread the ball around. They love to just get 4 or 5 receivers out on the field and just use that spread attack. So having a lot of defensive backs out on the field is something that you're probably going to see in this game, especially if they don't have Chase Edmonds. That makes it even harder. Now, if they don't have DeAndre Hopkins, that limits their options somewhat, but I still think you're going to see a spread attack.
Mhm.
And you're going to be testing the bottom of your defensive back depth chart. So I really wish we had Blair for this game so he could be out there because I just feel like you're really going to be testing your defensive back depth in a way that really hasn't been tested even against a team like the Packers. Because right now you got DJ Reed and Trey Brown playing great football. You've got Ugo Amadi. He's okay. I'm not in love with him or anything, but he's not bad.
Yeah.
Ryan Neal. And then I don't even know who would be your cornerback after that. I don't know.
John Reed, I guess.
Yeah,
They
it's
can't run
not
the.
good.
You're right though. Packers can't run the spread concepts of what the Cards can.
Yeah, yeah. And the Cardinals when they're spreading you out with Christian Kirk and if they have him Hopkins and Rondell Moore, I think his name is,
Mm-hmm.
and they got a couple other guys
AJ
too. And
Green.
yeah, AJ Green, they're spreading the ball around like crazy. And if you have a weakness anywhere in your defensive back depth chart, they're probably going to find it. So, really wish we had Blair for this game. That's one of my first thoughts.
Yeah. Oh, it's brutal there for that because those dime packages, Brendan, like we haven't seen them unveiled since the Niner game, really the preponderance of the dime package where they really shut down the Niners in that game, going to a dime a large part of the time. And we had Blair and Neal on the side as basically on this field at the same time in those dime sets. That'd be very interesting to be able to try it out in this particular game. I just hope that we don't see Brendan because they don't have that extra corner. Here's my worry is remember a couple years ago, they fell in love with a 4-3 base and
Mm-hmm.
they stayed in base like the highest percentage of the time in the whole NFL for like
Oh
by
yeah.
double the team by. So now they come in this game and they go, we'll keep Jordan Brooks on the field. And then that'll be the thing where I think they attack because now you got Brooks now maybe potentially lined up against AJ Green or Rondell Moore in the slot or a variety of different mismatches. I think even Ertz is a mismatch for Brooks in the slot if he's got to be lined up him, especially in man. He's better in man, actually. We saw that this last week in Packers, but if they play a lot of zone, we're in trouble with that.
Yeah, Brooks had that really nice play, like 25 yards downfield against Lazard, though. I got to give him that. I mean, I'm up and down every week with Jordan Brooks, but he had a pretty good game against Green Bay, I think, and his coverage was not bad in that game. I have to give him some credit there.
He can play man, right, Brendon. He can play man. It's zone he can't play, but that's been my issue with this is we're not a team that asks our defensive players to play a lot of man. We play a huge amount of zone. So you're putting him in defense where his weaknesses are very often then opened up in the coverage element of things.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, that's my first thought. My second thought is there's a good chance that this might be a reunion between Chandler Jones and Jamarco Jones. And we remember what happened last time.
It wasn't a marriage. It wasn't a honeymoon.
Yeah. I think Chandler Jones had 4 sacks against Jamarco. And I'm not optimistic about Dwayne Brown playing. And even if he does play, it's not like he's playing good. So whatever. But I'm not excited about that. I'm not excited for a full game of the Jamarco Jones versus Chandler Jones experience.
You ready for the stone?
That's probably not going to go any better. I'm not going to act like a 6th-round rookie is going to be better. But it occurs to me that the last time Jamarco Jones saw serious work at left tackle, it was Chandler Jones who just completely baptized him. But that being said, one thing that's kind of nice, I had David in my chat after the Packers game point this out. The Seahawks tight ends were the one thing that you kind of felt good about coming out of that Packers game on offense. Everett had a monster game. Disley made a big play. I think our tight ends combined for like 9 catches for 90 yards. Arizona's defense is kind of known for not really covering tight ends. It's a weakness of that D. So if we can build on something there, if we can build on that Gerald Everett game and get him really involved in this one, I think there are some things we can do there. That's one of the things I'm hanging my hat on here.
And it would push us to getting Russell into that. You want to go short passing with Russell, Russ. Here's your guys. Here's the guys that have been, I think, of our running backs and receivers and tight ends. This is a stat I'm just pulling off the top of my head. I would say they've been the most efficient in their target to catch. And when you target them, it's something like probably upwards of 90% we're sitting at right now with our tight ends versus any other position. And to me, that's where you look at that and go, okay, that almost in itself, that stat in itself almost bears it out to going to them more. There's an efficiency of all there, especially when you're struggling so badly to get the short passing game going. And that is tight ends bread and butter, historically speaking, is to be able to be taken advantage of in that short passing game. So a great point. I hope that they do likewise lean more into this. People in my chat have been, I'm sure yours has been screaming for the tight ends to be used more recently. And to their point, look, it pays off when you do,
Yeah, and what's the biggest problem with this team overall right now? Probably time of possession. Shorter passes to tight ends are going to keep drives alive longer. That's the thing with some of these long touchdowns. Like against the Titans, we had the 70-yarder to Lockett and the 70-yarder to Swain. They're great plays, but they're putting your defense right back out onto the field after they barely have a chance to sit down. You got to start utilizing these tight ends to make these drives actually take like 8-9 minutes. So that's a big thing for me as well.
That's what this offense was brought in here to do, was to move the chains. It's good to still get the deep passes. It's good for the stuff that's worked historically to work, but the new offense is built to move the ball. It's built to be more sustainable, more less of the boom or bust. Because like on your point on that, you get the 70-yard bomb, and then you have sandwiched between that 2 3 and outs, or 2 3 outs, a bomb, another 3 and out. That's where you've really now put your defense in that bind of just being on the field almost a whole half at that point, and then they wear down fast.
Right. Other than that, so much of this game is still an unknown because we don't know if we're getting Kyler or not. Like if Kyler plays, that's you would still have some of the same issues stopping the spread, regardless of who the quarterback is. But obviously, Kyler presents a completely different challenge than Colt McCoy. So a lot of this game is still a big unknown right now because we just don't know who we're going to get. Based off the things I've heard, it feels like we're going to get Colt McCoy. I got to be honest. I don't know if that's just me being hopeful because I feel like we obviously have a better chance to win. I kind of feel like we're getting Colt McCoy. And I did not feel that way coming into this week. I assumed that Kyler was 100% going to go. but
I did too.
I
I
don't
thought
feel
they
like.
were arrested him like last week because they were like, who cares about Carolina? We got Seattle coming up next week, and
Mhm.
they're gonna save their guy for when they really felt like they needed him, especially having some room for error like they did. That's how it felt. I don't know that wasn't based on anything or a quote or anything. But I agree with you. It does look like it's twisting back towards Cole too. He got us last year, so maybe it's a revenge game for us. You know what I mean? A little
Yeah,
bit, a little bit of Colt
yeah,
McCoy vengeance for what he did to us last year at the Giants.
yeah. But I'll say this: that even if Colt McCoy plays, I don't have full confidence. And the thing with like the defensive performance against the Packers that people I feel like need to remember a little bit more is that oftentimes high level performances or really low level performances in the NFL are a one off. You're not seeing a lot of teams consistently play at a super high level from week to week. Like I don't expect the defense to play that good in every game for the rest of the season. So
No.
I think Arizona is probably going to get some on us, even with Colt McCoy. Now, will it be enough for them to win? To me, that depends on a lot of things that we don't know quite yet.
Okay, so you're trotting him out because he's your quarterback, and you just got to kind of do this. To your point earlier, a little bit it's just the thing that when you're in this situation, you kind of have to do. Do you just run the ball more than you throw in this game? Then do you just try to lean into that as much as you possibly can? I mean, that's looking at the Cardinals' defense. I tried to kind of dive into this pretty deeply, and I could only find any vulnerability really in their ability to not stop the run at times.
Well, if you can, I would love to, but if Wilson really can't hand the ball off without messing up his finger, then now you're stuck in a really bad situation. And by the way, the fact that you said that publicly after that Packers game is a problem. Now everybody knows that. Like, I don't know why you came out and admitted that after the Packers game. That's a big problem. Now we can hope his finger got better during this week and maybe he's in a slightly better situation this time around compared to last week.
Well, it could be
But
too the weather, like the weather with the cold. I don't know if you ever broken something, but then you go into this like stifling cold weather after something being broken, even somewhat recently, and boy, it can really be. Sorry to interrupt you, but it can be really just it can be extra painful or stiff, or you know what I mean. It can be harder to kind of work through.
let me interrupt myself here real quick because I just got a little bit of a breaking news update.
Okay,
Bruce Irvin has
Bruce Irvin,
signed
Bruce.
with the Bears
Oh,
out of nowhere. Did not see that coming. Just wanted to go ahead and shout that out real quick. I just got the alert over here, and I'm like, I did not see that coming. But good
He
for him.
was
Good for
he
him.
was working out on Instagram posts and looking like he was coming back with a purpose for something. I'm surprised it is indeed the Bears with him. Would you have pulled that over Benzemayoa? That's who they're trotting out at the Sam line,
Mm.
right?
Well, right now, maybe you have something pretty decent going on defense.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know if you need to.
Maybe at this point, Bruce and Benson are all that different in what they give you
Hmm.
out there at the Sam. And I don't know what
Yeah,
Bruce has got as far as pass rush goes. That'd be the only other element you could maybe say is that well, Bruce is at least a better pass rusher than um, Bruce is at least a better pass rusher than Benson. I think we would probably
probably.
confirm and
Yeah,
establish that.
yeah. All
Real
right,
quick.
but okay, go
Sorry, go
ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead. We'll get it. Sorry.
Real quick, though, back to the running game. The other problem with us running the ball a lot is we don't really have running backs right now. Carson's out. Penny's useless. We, for some reason, I don't know why, we don't trust DJ Dallas at all. We're not playing him at all in the backfield, even though it seems like he has some talent. So maybe he just can't block. I don't know. And Alex Collins has a bum hip. He's not 100%. Like, you can't tell me that he's 100% right now. So that leaves you Travis Homer, who is a pure full third down back. Not somebody you ever really want to hand the ball off to unless it's 3rd and 30.
Yeah.
So you don't have a lot of options there at to run the ball a lot. You can't just grind 40 plus carries in a game right now. So the offense is really behind the 8 ball on that front as well. That's why there's been a lot of anti Shane Waldron sentiment this week from people in my stream.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, if he's probably not doing that good of a job right now. But if anybody on this team needs some excuses right now, I think it's him. He's got a quarterback with a bad finger who can't even take snaps under center. He's got no running backs. He's got a slow offensive line when I think we all kind of know that his offensive line, if he could put it together, would be much more agile than what we have.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff working against this offense right now, and I don't have a lot of faith in them in this game either, to be perfectly honest. So no, I don't think you can just run the ball and expect to be able to carry the load like that.
Did you saw the mic'd up segment with Carroll in Jacksonville or with Jacksonville a couple weeks ago? Did you get a chance to check that out?
Yeah,
What
the Waldron clip.
Right, the Waldron crypt to me, which was pretty startling. I think maybe we talked a little bit about it before, but to me that's a startling clip to watch. Where if you're down on Waldron, if you're of the opinion that Waldron's doing a poor job, the reasons that you just mentioned are absolutely valid. Russell's finger, dealing with an MVP, Hall of Fame quarterback level type who you're now trying to get acclimated into a new system, and all of the probable resistance you deal with in dealing with that, especially the old habits coming to bear. But beyond that, just having this head coach in your ear, run, run, pass, 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 run. What do you want to do here? And like most offensive coordinators, if I've always understood it, are guys that are like maestros who are allowed to just conduct their symphony as they see fit. Every once in a while, a coach will come in and impart, a little bit here, a little bit there, but not that. What about the next three plays, coach? Well, what about the next three plays, coach? Well, how about that next three play? That part seems a little bit much. And again, it becomes very hard for me to evaluate Waldron when we have all this we take away from it. It almost makes it nigh impossible, I would say.
Right, right. Yeah, so there's that part of it going on. Yeah, I've just been really kind of surprised at how much anti-Waldron sentiment I've seen. I know the offense just got shut out, so nobody or very few people did their job on offense on Sunday, so we can be critical of all of them pretty well. But I just kind of feel like now's the time to start looking at these players if you're going to really get mad at anybody, because you ran the last coach out of town last year because you felt like he was the problem. Now you bring in a completely different coach and you're still seeing problems. I think it's time to start looking at some of the stuff that's left over, that carried over from the old problems that got the old coach out of here.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I've gotten in some fights in my chat lately about the Waldron stuff, and I just wanted to go ahead and talk about it a little bit here.
This is a spot that I'm with you on 100%, and it's annoying to me where people go at him this hard when there are so many factors set up to play to be set up to fail here. You're being set up to fail. You really are. And frankly, like we think when he's sitting there with Russell Wilson and they're looking at plays from last year, I talked about the meme play from the Rams playoff game where you have Lockett being thrown to down the sideline and there's two different flat players running to flat routes on either side of Russell to either way. If he couldn't see one way, he could have seen it the other way. If he didn't see it that way, could have seen it this way. And it was like a meme shot that people did of an overhead shot of it to where you could really see it clearly in the deal. And when Waldron's showing him that this offseason, do you think Waldron's saying like, yeah, keep ripping it down to locking on those sideline shots, Russ? That's the way. That's the shot. That's the money shot right there. That thing that just got intercepted. That's what you want to do time and time again. Or is he saying, see, Russ, those open players there in the flat? Or again, just to double back around to your initial point at the start of this show, you've got the play to Lockett in this game in Packers. He's going into double coverage. He's late to see Lockett because he's not throwing with anticipation. He waits till Lockett's 5 yards past the cornerback to let it rip. And he misses Everett then in the flat. Is Waldron looking at that tape, not telling Russell to look to the flat, look to it's right there. It's wide open. Just let it go over there, Russ. That's where it's like, do you think Waldron's failing really in that capacity, Brendan, where he's not telling him that, where he's not in his saying, you need to go over into this hit, and that he's just maybe being ignored on that?
Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It doesn't pass the smell test. Like, again, Russell's air yards are higher than they've ever been. You bring in somebody from the Rams coaching tree who coached a guy like Jared Goff for years, who was known for not really having the greatest deep ball in the world, who was in an offense that was known for matriculating the ball down the field kind of slowly most of the time. And he's going to come in and say, hey, I want you to throw the ball deeper than you've ever thrown it before. I want you to completely forget about looking underneath. Like that doesn't make any sense to me. Now, I'm not saying that Waldron's doing a great job so far this year. He's probably done some good things and some bad things. Really hard to know what is his because we know how much Carroll is still involved in all this stuff. But it kind of my problem with the people who get on that stuff is, do you remember the story that the old guy told in Natural Born Killers about the rattlesnake?
I do. Remind me. It's been a while, but I remember it.
Yeah, it's like the farmer finds the sick rattlesnake, he nurses it back to health, and once the rattlesnake's nursed back to health, the first thing it does is bite and kill the farmer. And the farmer goes, "Why'd you bite me?" And he says, "Because I'm a damn rattlesnake."
Yeah.
And with Waldron, it's like you knew what he was when you hired him. He had never called plays before. He was young. He had limited experience. You knew that he wasn't going to be able to hit home runs right off the bat. You knew this was going to be a little bit of a process for him too.
Yeah.
So whatever shortcomings you put on Waldron, you got to realize he's probably going to learn. But right now, he is a rookie play caller. Right now, this is his first rodeo as an offensive coordinator. And to me, the people who, because I'm literally already getting people in my stream saying we need to fire Waldron after this season. We need to get him out of here. Some people want to fire him now. To me, it's almost like the DK Metcalf thing, where people say we need to trade Metcalf.
I know.
Because, yeah, it's like, okay, so right now, DK Metcalf needs to learn how to cool off, right? He does need to chill out. He is taking it a little too far. But most likely he's going to learn how to do that when he's a little older. He's going to mature. It's just the natural process of being a human being. So most likely if you trade him, he's going to go somewhere else. He's going to figure this stuff out, and he's going to be a model teammate for some other team. So why would you deal with the bad DK Metcalf and let him work that through a system with you and then send him somewhere else so that other team can then benefit from having the good DK Metcalf? Why would you be like the farm team for DK Metcalf to learn how to control his emotions? It's the same thing for me with like Waldron. Like odds are good that if you fire him after the season, he's going to go somewhere else. He's going to build his credibility back, going to find another OC job somewhere else, and he's probably going to be pretty good. So why would you take Waldron on for the struggles and then not stick with it in the hope of him figuring it out in a few years? Why would you let another team benefit from the struggles that you had to put up with? So that's kind of my Waldron rant.
Well, and you also made a point about 2 months ago on this before all this started. So let's just take a more of an NFL view of perspective of this situation. Let's remove Waldron from this process. Brendon, you said months ago, and you were right on this respect. And I counted you at the time thinking we'd get some early returns. We haven't, but that doesn't defeat the part that your initial point on it was right, which was that when you bring a new offensive coordinator into a system, it tends to take at least a year to get things right. So do we just throw that? Are we, with you having said that, and the people that are in your chat who do listen to you and do watch that, do you guys just throw that all out the window at that point and forget he said that 2 months ago and saying, this is what tends to happen within it? You got Kyle Shanahan, offensive mastermind, right? The guy's brilliant. He knows how he solves the Rams. Oh my God. This guy goes to the Falcons a couple of years ago as an offensive coordinator. First year under Matt Ryan, were they good? No, they were okay. It was kind of rough, kind of a little bit of friction. Couldn't quite, Matt, you need to do it this way. I'm trying to get you to do it this, Matt. Rath going, I know what I'm doing. I went to BC. I'm super smart. Shut up. Arr. Then you get to the next year after it. What happens? Second year, year two, MVP for Matt Ryan. Best year of his career. Almost wins the Super Bowl. So just to double back on your point on this year was your point 2 months ago before any of this happened, and saying, guys, before we go into this, just remember, that's why you brought up the point at the time was you're trying to prepare people from a little bit of a rough road with having to deal with his offensive coordinator. And you were right on that respect. So it's, again, like if you're right back then and you're sitting on the point now, again, probably gives you more, to me, credence on the point, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah, and there has been some good stuff. I still look back at that Colts game, and I'm like, okay, there's some stuff in this game I really like. I love that touchdown throw to Everett that they made in that game where the route tree was such that nobody was within 10 yards of Everett, and he just catches an easy pass over the middle. I'm thinking about some of those running plays where you had somebody faking a jet sweep in the backfield where it pulls the defense that way, and then the running back goes the other way. There's some stuff there. There's something to build on there. Unfortunately, we're not seeing as much as we would like right now, but some of that is because of the personnel. You don't have offensive linemen that can move in space, which is probably part of the reason, by the way, why you didn't take Creed Humphrey. I know we're all furious about that still, and with reason, but that's probably part of the reason why you didn't draft him. That might be part of the reason why you didn't get some of the other players that you could have gotten. The only players on this team that are Shane Waldron's players on offense would be Everett, Eskridge, and I guess Gabe Jackson. And Eskridge has played 17 snaps. So these are not his players is the other thing.
And even Gabe Jackson might be questionable. I mean, even like just that's not like a prime beef choice of steak right there at that point. He's going to, he's going down for a little bit of a secondary cut there for that one, I'm sure, if all things being equal. So I'm giving Waldron time beyond this year. I can't, there's so many things for a first time offensive coordinator. It's hard enough anyway. It with the other factors involved here, the Carroll factor, the Wilson injury factor, that just didn't. There's a lot there more extra there to make his job a little bit tougher, and all the more reason to have a little bit maybe more patience. To your point on that, and DK, just to touch on DK really quickly, Brendan, because I'm glad to hear you're on this spot too. It's something I know where people are coming from to look to do DK if you're in a rebuild mode. If you're rebuilding, why not just offload everything? Why not just build up on all the assets you can? I think you do reach a point of accumulating so many assets at that point that the returns are diminishing for having theoretically you have 7 first-round picks over 2 years, 3 years, and it's like, Madden, you're going to stack the ultimate team. But look at the Raiders with the Khalil Mack and stacking up all those first rounders. How'd that all kind of bear out for them now with Colin Farrell and Ruggs and the running back who's been diminishing last couple of years, who started out like a bat out of hell, but now it's not quite as good. So yeah, it's great to have a lot of picks, but that's not the guaranteed pathway necessarily to finding the rebuild success either. And offloading a player this good and this hard to find, this freakishly talented, in my opinion, I just don't think you give up on that kind of guy, especially you don't have a lot of that in your team going forward. What do you have 2 years down the line, Brendan, on this team?
Yeah, that's what like the Kansas City Royals do. They get good players, can't build around them fast enough because they're the Royals, so they just ship them to the Yankees. That's what the Miami Marlins do. We don't want to be the Miami Marlins. We don't want to be somebody else's farm team.
No.
Yeah.
And there's nothing worse than watching a guy you send somewhere else and he blows up somewhere else and he's just lighting the world on fire, and you're like, we couldn't have done this. This was beyond our reach, beyond the scope. We couldn't get it here. Thank you real quick to Life and Sports Talk with Jake. I appreciate you, my guy. Says, keep up the good work, guys. You always come through. Well, thank you so much. Thanks, Jake. You're awesome for watching. I appreciate all you guys watching. If you do like what you're checking out and watching right now, please do me a favor and hit that like button for me and Brendan on this one. And if you're not already subscribed to Brendan, what are you doing? What are you doing? Don't be such a crazy man. Get over there. He's got great content. Doesn't cost you a thing. Subscribe to his channel. We also got Spectre 7 coming in. Hello, Spectre 7. Good to see you on here with the $2 donation. I appreciate you. It says $2 for that steak reference. Thanks. I was gonna go filet versus what's a bad cut of steak? I don't know a bad cut of steak because I always go for the good cut of steak. I can't bring myself.
Taco Bell ground beef.
There we go.
That comes out of the hose.
That's good. Exactly the stuff they got to refry with water.
Yeah. I don't even know if Gabe Jackson is like the steak. Maybe he's more like the cornbread. Like the steak was supposed to be a big free agent that you pull in, somebody, or a big trade you land, somebody with real substance. Maybe Gabe Jackson's not even a piece of steak. Maybe that's too nice.
I got it. He's a steak, but he's that steak that's got the fatty stuff going through all it, right? Like it's got all the fattiness, and it's not the good fatty. It's the just chewy stuff that just destroys the flavor of it, where you just got to keep chewing and chewing and chewing, but it's not really giving you anything. There's a lot going on there, but not a lot.
Well, I think we had Gabe Jackson watching this stream, but I think he just turned it off.
I think so. Yeah, well, he's got to go eat a sandwich. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't want to be too mean to him because I don't think he's playing badly, but that can't be that. Yeah, that can't be your big off-season acquisition if you're going all in. Like you got to bring something with a little more oomph than Gabe Jackson.
Well, and we have a key holding call in this game, and you saw a couple times Clark really get the better of him in this game at times with Damian Lewis. The issue is a lot of times happens with this team is it's not just the one move; it's that there's always some offshoots of the one move that are cut. Tenderloin, yeah, that's what it was. He's a tenderloin. That's what we're looking for. Thanks, GoX 2022. But you're not only adding Gabe Jackson, which it does help your football team, but unfortunately now you're flipping Damian Lewis to left guard, and you're taking his strength, reducing him, and you're taking his limitations and you're raising them. And that's what you saw here, where he's got a 3-tech and Ryan Clark across from him, and who's just going to whoop him. And he's not going to have to deal with that same type of matchup over on the right side. And I like the Gabe addition, just it had to come at the cost of Damian Lewis's development. And boy, that's the part that stings a little bit. Because I think you can say at this point, can't you, Damian? He's not a long-term left guard for us. Damian
not with what I'm seeing right now, no. A lot of people in my chat actually want to move him to center, which I get, but I don't want to move him again. If I want to move him anywhere, I want to move him back, but I don't know if that's an option. There was actually an article on Field Goals earlier today saying, should we swap the guards? Put Damian back at right guard and let Gabe play left, which, I mean, I would do that.
Yes. Yes. Here, let's walk this through. Okay, let's walk it through, Brendan. Let's go through it. Gabe Jackson played left guard throughout his whole time in college. Through probably his first 3 to 4 years in the pros, he played left guard. He got moved to right guard with some diminishing athletic ability. That's why you move a guy from left guard to right guard, as you're trying to now go, oh, he's starting to maybe get hurt a little bit with these matchups. Okay, fine. But he's played left guard. Damian Lewis was a right guard in college. He came here as a right guard last year. He was not a left guard, and pass protection is where he's got awful at. The right guard gets help from the center more often than not because offense is played to the strong side of the formation more often than not, which is the right side of the football field. So he's going to get help, which means now he can go with his road grading stuff when that's time for that to happen. That then frees the center to get in the second level because he can one-on-one his man in run blocking. It makes it so much more fluid across the line. When they made the initial trade for Gabe, I was surprised they weren't doing that in the first place. And again, I know why they're not, Brendan, because they're going, well, he's 33 now. He doesn't move like he did when he was 27. He can't set up in the pot. He needs to be at that right guard, which sort of protects him a little bit. But again, we get to why I have an issue with the move in the first place. Is it?
Yeah, and the other thing is, like, Gabe Jackson might not be here next year. He probably will be, but he probably won't be here in 2 years. He's old. He's going to be on an expiring contract. Damian Lewis could be here for the next decade. I want to try to save that guy. Yeah. I don't care if Gabe Jackson goes to left guard and gets destroyed because he's 33. Damian Lewis could be here for, like I said, 10 years.
And Damian Lewis is getting destroyed at the left guard as it is, really. I mean, if you look at his PFF scores this year versus last year, you look at the pass protection stuff, how it's awful across the board. So is Gabe going to be that much worse at the position he's played prior versus the guy who's not good right now, who we know will be good at right guard? That's the thing about Gabe is he's not been bad, you're right, this year at right guard, but Damian Lewis could be sub-dominant at right guard. He could be sub. He was playing at a near Pro Bowl level last year, his rookie year. He doesn't take a step forward at that natural position this year if he's just allowed to play in it. I think that's kind of that's a leap of logic to say it's not, in my opinion. I'd go that route. I think it's smart to, Chat's got some pearls here and there, and that's one of those pearls, I think, on their part for it. And by the way, I would black pill, blue pill, whatever pill we take this offseason, I think that you do go forward with Damian Lewis back to right guard, move Gabe Jackson for a 6th rounder, call it a day. And go find a true left guard for the position out there. Be it that, there's a guy in the draft I was just scouting the other night that you could be looking at right around in your range of things. By the way, I did do some scouting on Daniel Lele. I like him, man. You might be onto something with that guy.
Yeah, if he can survive to the 2nd round, which as of right now, most people think he will, because there's seems to be a lot of interior offensive line talent in this draft. Seems like the deficiency is at tackle because there's Evan Neal or whatever the guy is from Alabama, and then there's nothing really below him. But Falele, it depends on how these last few college games go, and it depends on how his combine goes. But he's probably going to freak people out at the combine because he's like 400 pounds and he can move.
He's legit for.
He makes me think of Becton, the guy the Jets took.
Oh yeah,
a little bit.
He's got Becton into him, a little bit of the Ogden thing to his game from going back in the day. He's not as fluid an athlete as Ogden was by any stretch, but he might actually be bigger than Jonathan Ogden. The thing that I'm doing a video on it with my Seahawks scouting on this, and my angle on it is on him is going to be upside. And that this is truly a player in Daniel Fa'alele that it's when they talk about upside and guys, this is what you in college, because that's what these guys talk about scouting wise. This thing drives me crazy about NFL GMs, our GM, every GM, is they all upside is one of the most used scouting terms, and they would all have you lead to believe that's what they're most looking for in a player, is tapping into the guy who can get you the upside. We'll teach it, we'll coach it, we'll show them the way. But then when the rubber meets the road and draft time comes, what do we see, Brendan, throughout all these teams? Reach, need, reach, need, reach, need, where every team's drafting essentially to fill in holes they haven't addressed in free agency for the most part. This guy, I say this as a true upside because only a couple years in college, no high school, no peewees, no junior high, from Australia. You've only got this amount of tape, but he is gigantic. He moves way better. He had the rugby basketball background, so he moves really better than a guy who's 6 foot and has any business moving at that size. And the strength is legitimate, but it's upside. It's looking to that thing, which I think, Brendan, this is my bold prediction for you on the guy. He's going to launch into the 1st round.
Yeah, I believe it, because we know those combine warriors do often end up rocketing themselves up at the last minute, and he will probably be a combine warrior.
He will to a degree. It's going to be hard for him. Like his arms are so long. Those guys struggle with like the 225s, not because they're not strong, because they got 37-inch arms and they got to go an extra 3 or 4 inches on the bench press, for instance, to pop it out. You see those guys sometimes get down on the reps and they'll get knocked, or the big guys can't move necessarily with the quick 20-yard shuttle stuff. But that's not he's so long. It's like this is what you liked about Stone Forsythe. When they're that big and that long, they don't have to have the feet to constantly be moving with the pitter patter. They can get the guys out the back of the pocket with their length and size, because there's so much man to get around. And then once you get around them, you're still dealing with these long arms that can just basically dollar-som like out of Street Fighter 2. They can dollar-som you out of the pocket, whenever they basically want. And he's got that from the right tackle position, in my opinion. He can do that all day long.
Right. Right. And hey, if we do end up completely blowing things up this offseason, if we do the Wilson trade, then maybe we could still get him in the first round. So he's not necessarily out of bounds just because of that.
And if not him, you got WSU's Abraham Lucas, which is probably that's my number 2 guy. He's like the mini version of Falele.
Yeah. All right. So
well, let's give me a prediction on this game. I know you don't like these predictions, but I feel like pressing you for, because the fans want it.
Well, if we get Cole McCoy, I'm going to say we win. I'm going to go like 20-17. If we get Kyler, and unless Kyler's pulling a Wilson and going out there when he's not ready, I'm going to say we lose 31-23, something like that. Offense plays better, but in that case, it won't be enough.
Yeah, you would see him struggling. So here's my bold prediction to you on this is I think this week we get a desperate Seahawks team. No more room for error. No more. It's basically almost you lose and you're going home. I know you're not mathematically eliminated to believe that you're going to get in the playoffs on the heels of losing this game, as it is and set up. I think that's going to lead you to a desperate team. And I think desperation in the NFL sometimes in these week in and week out, where you can get different levels of intensity from teams as they're going through the ups and downs of the energy levels through seasons. You get a team that's desperate to get done, that needs this win, that needs, in a Cardinal team that I think, yeah, it'd be great to get this win, but they're not necessarily in that same, we have to get this win mode of things. I've got to think maybe that you're able to edge them out almost by that reason alone a little bit, if it's just by sheer will, I guess.
I'm rooting for it.
Will or hope, Brendon? One of the two. Will or blind hope?
Yeah, I don't know. I just think that their spread offense is a bad matchup for our defense, is my hang up there. I feel like it's going to be really hard to stop a team that is able to reliably and consistently and accurately spread the ball out to that degree.
Yeah.
I think a big reason why we had success against the Packers was they don't have that wide receiver depth.
Right.
After Devontae Adams, it's not good. It's Alan Lazard, who dropped like 3 passes in that game. I think it's Valdez Scantling, I think, and Equanimous St. Brown, and
he was out last week. So even
you're right.
Yeah, he was out. But I mean, they don't have a Zach Ertz. They don't have, you have DeAndre Hopkins. Let's say you have Devontae Adams, but no AJ Brown, no Rondale Moore, even, who's a little gadget guy that they use in the context of bubble screens, and they found a way to really get the most out of his skill set. Christian Kirk. I mean, they are stacked, man, and they're using Ertz, by the way. He's not just there in that trade for the Eagles as just a puzzle. Like, they're really like giving him 4, 5, 6 targets a game. It's impressive how much they're getting out of him just for the fact they brought him on like 2 weeks ago. But yeah, I agree. And then you've got the final factor that, Brendon, being that they might lean to the linebacker because they're cornerback light, so they might lean more linebacker heavy approach to deal with the spread, which ends up could be. Unless Jordan can continue his ascent here as his coverage maestro.
Yeah.
And, we'll see. Well, any final thoughts on our team or anything else off the top?
No, I think we did a great job covering it, and I want to thank you for having me back on today. It was a lot of fun, and we'll be doing it again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I always love having you on. And again, if you're not already subscribed to Brendon's channel, just look down there in the description section. I got a link to his channel below there. Very easy to pop over and subscribe. He does some great content over there. I really do appreciate you having me over on your channel as well, Brendon. This is always awesome. I appreciate you guys watching as well. Hit that like button if you did like what you're watching. We do appreciate it. And, just don't forget, don't you guys ever forget now, even in these dark times, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.